Good morning, everyone. We're taking a live look this morning in Dublin, Ireland right now, about lunchtime. Check that out. Just hours ahead of the big St. Patrick's Day holiday over there. It looks like a movie set. It's so springy and lovely. Love seeing that photo. See what's happening on the other side of the world. It's nice. We are celebrating the luck of the Irish this week, 2 years after the COVID pandemic began. The changes you can expect at your favorite establishments, all the way to some studies about consuming too much alcohol. We're going to talk about that a little bit this morning here on the Morning Medical Update, which starts right now. And another good morning to you. It is Tuesday, March 15th. Welcome into the Morning Medical Update. Thank you so much for joining us here on Facebook, on YouTube, and now on Twitter. The medical news headlines this morning for you. A new study out of the University of Georgia found the cost of fungal infections in the U.S. reached nearly $7 billion. This was back in 2018. Those included everything from issues affecting the respiratory system to the bloodstream. Researchers now fear with more infections and more antibiotics being prescribed, it will lead to more cases of antibiotic resistance. TikTok users seeking deep tans are using a questionable method, spraying self-tanning products up their noses and then lying in the sun or in a tanning bed. No, no, and no across the board there is what I'm guessing. The main ingredient in self-tanning products is dihydroxyacetone, or DHA. It is FDA approved for the use of the skin. It causes a chemical reaction when it heats and it's applied and then pigments your skin. Dermatologists around the world are warning people not to do this. You could become sick and throw up and all sorts of bad things could happen. Okay, forget the green beer this St. Patrick's Day. There's now a blue adult beverage you might want to indulge in. It is made by Hoppy Urban Brew based in France. The beer, called Line, is made with a blue-green algae. The makers say this is a healthy beer because it only has 3% alcohol, and the blue-green algae is packed with protein and rich in vitamins, along with some antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties that can help strengthen the immune system. And for many, the Irish holiday started this past weekend. The city of Overmore Park held its first ever St. Patrick's Day parade this past Saturday. Lots of people out, lots of green, marching through downtown OP. There were balloons, floats, kids, people, and sunshine. So a lot of people enjoying that this week. It's nice to see, finally. Get your questions sent in to us today on YouTube, Facebook, and the Medical News Network. You can find links to those right there on your screen. So get those in. But now, let's get to Dr. Dana Hawkinson, Medical Director of Infection Prevention and Control. I know this is not your lane, but the whole suntan stuff up the nose.
I was going to talk about that.
Hard no?
Hard no. You know, I think we've seen this all over now. Just a lot of people thinking they have good ideas about certain medications and how to use them. Using skin products and inhaling it or squirting it up your nose is a no-no. We know there can be side effects. This doesn't just go to that. This goes to a lot of different products when general population just thinks that they can use them in any sort of manner they want. That is not true. We know there can be extremely harmful effects, and so I think this is just one more case of that. Yet we know what is safe, and we were talking about this right before the show started. The vaccinations are safe, but yet there's a reticence to do that. So I think we just keep getting that message out there. And yes, if there is a product for your skin, please do not ingest it or inhale it. It's made to be topical. So,
good tip.
Yeah.
Do we get do numbers this morning? Sorry, I was looking down at my notes. Do we get to the numbers?
I will in just a minute, yeah. So we have 12 active infections, so down a little bit. We have been hanging in those high teens. Again, seeing less is always better. Of those 12, 0 in the ICU, 0 on the ventilator, 64 in that recovery period as well. So just overall, we are continuing to see better numbers in the hospital, overall better numbers in the community as well.
I'd like to see 0 down the line right there. That will be a very nice day. All right. Do we have any reporter questions on the line today? Okay, I have got one here. This is from Fox 4. Quick question, Dr. Hawkinson, and I want to bring in Dr. Matt Shumacher as well. What do the docs think about the Pfizer CEO saying that a fourth booster dose will be, quote, necessary, that it will be an absolute must? Is there anything that people should know at this point regarding the studies in this area? Are they ongoing? Any advice you have for people? Should they just get the shot or hold off?
Yeah, I'll defer to Dr. Shumacher after I answer, but I think we both certainly want to see the data. I think we have to understand where this quote is coming from. We know it's the CEO of Pfizer. We know they have done a great service to humanity with their vaccines, as well as Moderna, these mRNA vaccines, really proven to be very, very helpful and protective. Also, Johnson & Johnson. So the vaccines, we know they continue to protect against hospitalization, severe disease, and death, and that is really why they were created. I think he even said that in the story. The other thing we have to understand is, why are we looking to get a new vaccine? Is it to boost our antibodies? Because we know if you have higher levels of antibodies, you have less risk of infection. But we know that those antibodies decrease, or those antibodies contract, after you get further out from those dose of that dose of vaccine. So I think the big driver of what we are going to see on if additional dosing is needed, say 6 to 12 months after that booster dose. So again, that's the third dose if you are not immunocompromised, and that's the fourth dose if you're immunocompromised. I think we're going to see hopefully see the data to understand, are we still getting protection from going to the hospital, going to the ICU, and dying? We just don't have the data now. We certainly want to look for that. I think we are looking to Israel first, because we know they had large numbers of their populations that were getting fourth dose. I'm sure there will be data from other countries as well, and I think we really just want to see and understand the data about that. In addition, we also have to understand that during this time, people will also have been infected, and so they will gain some immunity from that as well. We've always said, however, vaccines and vaccination is the safest way to gain that immunity. But then when you have infection in there as well, we know you're gaining immune responses to those other parts of the virus that we don't see on the vaccine. So I think the bottom line is, we have to wait and see what the data shows us. And if there is, it may be just for certain populations. But I think we are still waiting for all that. And I'll kind of defer to Dr. Shumacher.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Hawkins. And the vaccine is very safe. I think a fourth dose, there's no downside to it, but we really need to see the data. We're not sure with decreasing antibodies what that means as far as protection, because you have to take into account your memory T cells and what they may be able to do if re-exposed. I think the most important thing at this point, as opposed to worrying about a fourth dose, is ensuring that we get everybody vaccinated, including boosted, that is unvaccinated at this point.
But it's okay, right? It's safe.
It is safe. It's a very safe
absolutely.
vaccine.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right, we're going to scooch
Hi, guys.
on.
Good morning. I have one.
Hey.
All right. Hi. Good morning.
Hi, guys. It's Taylor, Channel 41. Good morning.
Hi.
Hi, it's been a minute.
Wanted to ask about, we had a report this morning about the rising cases in China again, that they're experiencing some of the highest cases and deaths that they've had since the beginning of the pandemic. Do you know anything about that? Is that a new strain that people need to be aware of? What can you tell us about what's going on in China right now?
Yeah, the only thing I'm aware of is that it's probably Omicron. I haven't heard that it's a new variant or anything like that. We know Hong Kong is being decimated right now. A lot of those problems come from elderly populations and nursing home populations that aren't fully vaccinated, and that is still a mystery to me. We know China has taken a zero COVID stance, so we know that is playing a part now, as now they have overwhelming infections. There certainly are a lot of factors that go into this, but yeah, we know that China is experiencing outbreaks in a lot of their cities. We saw one story that an Apple supplier has to be shut down because the city is in lockdown for a couple weeks. We know, again, Hong Kong right now is being devastated as well. I think that, again, there's a multitude of factors. First of all, being the trying for that zero COVID stance, where they don't have a lot of natural immunity that has been gained, or some population immunity. Also, lack of vaccinations, especially for those high-risk populations like the elderly. So I think there are a number of different factors that go into that, but we know we just have to wait and see what happens with China as a whole, and of course Hong Kong, and hopefully they are able to come out of that sometime soon with not too much more loss of life. But I think it's going to be important to get everybody in those countries, in every country really, vaccinated and get those vaccines to those underserved countries as well.
Dr. Shumacher, your comments?
I don't really have anything additional to add to that. I think part of it could be, as we wane on into the second year, people getting a little more lax with their masking, social distancing, and hand hygiene practices may play a part as well.
Right. Dr. Matt Shumacher is an infectious disease doctor here at our health system. I just wanted to officially introduce you to the program. And Dr. Richard Dubinsky, a neurologist here. We're going to talk about the effects of drinking on the brain this morning. You're going to help us understand what's happening and what's going on up there when we drink a little too much. So get ready to wear and also spend the green this St. Patrick's Day. New numbers from the National Retail Federation finds that 54% of us plan to celebrate the Irish holiday, spending roughly $43 a piece. So how will we celebrate? Most will wear green, while others will pack their favorite Irish bar or restaurant, go to or host a party, or go out and watch or participate in the parades. So with masks no longer on anymore, what can you do to keep you and your family safe from COVID and other viruses out there? So Matt Shoemaker is going to talk a little bit about that. And also joining us is Bill Teal. He is with the Kansas City Restaurant Association. So good morning to both of you. Thanks for joining us, Bill. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. Okay, so we're gonna find out how restaurants are taking it. I'm sure they're happy to be back and open for business. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But Dr. Shoemaker, just let's talk about, this is the first. It's kind of like this is that time of year we remember when the pandemic hit 2 years ago. This is feeling the most like normal that it has since pre-pandemic time. So, what should people be keeping in mind? I mean, and we talk about super spreader events. It feels like that's something we discussed before the vaccine came along. What kind of risks are out there? What do you want us to know?
We still have COVID circulating as well as other respiratory viruses. So I think the biggest thing is ensuring that you are fully vaccinated, including your booster for COVID. On top of that, you need to make sure you have your seasonal influenza vaccination. And then pay attention to the local county and municipal health department guidelines regarding masking and social distancing wherever you're at, depending on what the local spread of the virus is. The other thing is practicing good hand hygiene. That can't be overstated as well.
I agree. Dr. Hawkinson, we talked a lot about super spreader events over the last couple of years and concerns that you would have when these kind of events would come up. Are those a thing of the past, super spreader events?
Yeah.
Is it as scary as it sounds? I know you've been a big proponent of people enjoying their lives and doing it safely and getting out and getting fresh air and sunshine, and this is kind of a way to do it.
Yeah, super spreader events or super spreaders, we do know and understand that really 80% of the infections and the spread is really taken by 20% of the people who may reproduce and express more virus out to the community than others. And so, super spreader events, that's hard to say. Are we talking about multi-day things? Are we talking about one event like eating at a reception or something like that, or a concert? I think as long as we can continue to have people, just as Dr. Shoemaker said, get vaccinated, be up to date with their vaccines, this will certainly cut down on those super spreader events. And if we're talking about the short term, again, hopefully we are going into warmer weather where people will be able to do things outside. Parades outside and celebrations outside are really going to be much safer than inside. We always have to be on the lookout for those super spreader events. And more as an individual, you have to understand your risks about going to these things. You can always wear a mask even if they aren't mandated. Make sure that you are up to date on your vaccination and keep yourself safe. So I think we have to talk about the individual, but also the population and the community here in these cases.
Bill Teal, I want to turn to you. Again, thank you for joining us today. Tell us some steps that restaurants are taking this time of year to get ready for the crowds.
Well, when it comes to the virus, most restaurants have kept a lot of their procedures in place, including the staff wearing masks in the front of the house and in the back of the house, extra sanitation, in a lot of cases, disposable menus. So what we did at the beginning of the pandemic, we've continued throughout the end of it, even though masks are no longer required.
How excited are businesses to be open and ready for the crowds, and again, feeling like things are somewhat back to normal?
Well, it's very exciting for everyone, and not just the restaurants. I think the customers, people are anxious to get out and celebrate St. Patrick's Day or basketball games or Cinco de Mayo is coming up. The consumers are ready to get out and enjoy.
It is. It's kind of the best time of the year. You're right. the cold is lifting and everyone's out and gathering and being able to just be outside in the sunshine. It's nice. What's just your one big message you want people to know heading out? Mask, no mask, vaccinated, not vaccinated, we're all mixed in together. Just what would your message be on behalf of the restaurants?
I would tell everybody to be careful. And I think this was discussed earlier about each individual may have their own risks and their own problems that they have to deal with. So be comfortable in your restaurant. If you're not comfortable, don't stay. If they're doing the things that make you feel comfortable, then those are the restaurants you want to participate in. So I think the restaurants are doing the best they can, but it's up to the individuals too to feel safe when they go into restaurants.
It really is. Restaurants have been a lot like schools. I think they've really done a good job. They've done the best they can so that they can stay open and for business and keep people safe and keep people coming back. So with St. Patrick's Day and spring break, for many, it's this week and alcohol will be flowing. We want to talk about alcohol in the brain right now. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania find that the more alcohol drank, the more it ages your brain. They studied 36,000 people and found 2 drinks per day ages the brain up to 2 years. 3 drink ages the brain up to 3 years. And the researchers found that those who had as many as 4 drinks per day deteriorated their brain health by 4 to 5 years. So that's why we brought in neurologist Dr. Richard Dubinsky to talk a little bit about that. Does that study hold up to what you know to be true about brain and aging of the brain, doctor?
Yes, it does. Alcohol is well known to cause atrophy of the brain, more so in certain areas, the frontal lobes, which are involved in social interactions, inhibition of behaviors, and also the cerebellum, which is important for coordination. But that's acute intoxication. Long-term use does damage the brain. Some of that may be reversible, some of it is not.
I want to ask more about that here in just a moment, but what's actually happening in the brain when we consume alcohol? And I think we think of the brain as its own organ because we talk about the liver when it comes to drinking too much alcohol, but what is actually happening inside our brain?
The alcohol promotes the formation of reactive oxygen species that cause oxidative stress on the brain. It also releases some excitatory neurotransmitters that can damage the brain.
Okay, so we hear things like a glass of wine a night can be good for the heart, but what might benefit one part of the body may be bad for another. Is it that 1 to 2 drinks a day thing still hold up? Is that something that we recommend being safe and okay?
Many of those earlier studies were flawed in that they combined former drinkers with current abstainers, and they may have overestimated the health benefits of alcohol. When studies more recently been done on a more strict definition of teetotalers versus those with daily consumption, that health benefit disappears.
So what is recommended? What would be, if you were talking to somebody, what would be the recommended amount of alcohol that would be safe without damaging the brain? 0?
Probably close to 0.
Okay.
It's also important to remember that this is from the British Biobank, so they used British definitions of a standard unit of alcohol, which is 10 mLs versus the U.S., which is 14. So it's basically a half pint of beer versus a 12-ounce can of beer.
So they drink more than us? Maybe. Well, you know.
No, the Brits are a bit stricter in terms of defining alcohol consumption. So their drinks that they're looking at are smaller than ours.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about reversing the effects of aging the brain. It's gone. Once it's gone, it's gone. Is there anything we can do to repair any of it?
Physical activity and mental activity definitely can help promote brain health, and Dr. Jeff Burns at our Alzheimer's Center is working on many studies of that to try to forestall the effects of aging and the onset of dementia.
So what's some advice for better brain health in general? Limiting alcohol for sure, but as far as good foods to eat, you mentioned exercise and just people doing crossword puzzles and reading more as they age. Do all those things help?
Yes, they do. The Mediterranean diet appears to show some benefit in terms of brain health, as does physical and mental activity.
All right, I'm going to get to some community questions because they are coming in for our folks here today. Okay, Bill Teal, I have a question. Isaac wants to know, I know that when dining rooms initially closed, restaurants began selling takeout alcohol drinks. Are most restaurants in Kansas City still doing that? People really liked that feature.
Yeah, most restaurants that adopted that earlier are continuing to do it, yes.
Any concerns with that? Any advice regarding that? Besides, do not open it until you get home.
No, no real concerns. We haven't seen any data that shows that it's created any problems. There are safety features involved. You have to check an ID to make sure that whoever's picking up the alcohol to go is in fact old enough. And so far it hasn't created any problems. You also have to buy food with your alcohol purchase. So there are some safety checks involved.
Yeah, pretty well regulated. Jean wants to know, what are your comments, doctors, about the sewage data that's pointing to an increase in COVID and a possible warning of a spring wave here in the U.S.? Who wants to jump in first?
Yeah, I mean, that was just recently reported based on wastewater data. It is concerning that there may be another surge coming that we haven't detected yet. We don't know if this is a different variant or if this is still just circulating Omicron. But it's something just to be on the lookout for. Again, to be protected against, I sound like a broken record, if you want to be protected against the next surge, make sure you're fully vaccinated, including your booster.
Dr. Hawkinson, anything to add about a possible spring wave?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we can emphasize that enough. We are getting to this point now where people have had some vaccination, they've had infection, a combination that hopefully will add to overall our population and our community immune response, or immunity, if you will, herd immunity. We've heard about that. But just as Dr. Shumacher said, we know and understand that in the past we have seen in sampling of wastewater that an increase in the amount detected really signals maybe 2 or 3 weeks down the road what we're going to be seeing with cases and hospitalizations. But I hope moving forward, just as Dr. Shumacher said, that if everybody can be up to date with their vaccinations, we can really prevent a lot of those hospitalizations, hopefully much more than we prevented in this last surge. And really that is the goal of these vaccines, which they continue to do very well. Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on it. And just to go back to that other question too, it really looks like the dominant strain around the world, or variant, continues to be Omicron. And then in some countries we do see BA2, or that offshoot of Omicron, taking up some of that space for those new infections as well. So right now, no other variants other than these Omicron variants that we've seen.
A follow-up question to that was, are surges going to go away? Will they be called something else? Or is it just going to be a continuation of surges? Or will that eventually, these high spike surges, or will it be like a flu spike?
It's hard to say. Certainly the last 2 years we've seen that it doesn't really matter what season. We have seen surges in every season, not really a seasonality like we have seen with influenza and other respiratory viruses. We may get to that eventually. I don't think anybody has a crystal ball. So I think that really remains to be seen. And if we are talking about surges in cases, that's one thing different than surges in hospitalizations. Again, the main goal is to continue to prevent people from those especially who are at high risk of severe disease, from getting that high risk disease by getting those vaccines so that they can stay home, stay out of the hospital, get well. And I think it's really hard to tell right now. Don't have a crystal ball. Eventually, hopefully, maybe it will get to more of a seasonality. We know there will be some background level of infection all throughout the year, but mostly about people's behavior, if we were talking about that, where we are doing things outside in the warm months and going back inside and having more contact with everybody in the winter and colder months, we may start to see some seasonality towards this as well.
Jennifer wants to know, Dr. Dubinsky, how do I know if I need to see a neurologist? What signs would I look for, and what signs might I look for maybe in a parent that needs to be addressed?
Well, that's a wide open question. For adults, it would be any sort of loss of thinking abilities, also development of new headaches perhaps, or signs of a stroke such as weakness. For a child, it would be if they're failing in school or not doing as well as they should.
Really? Okay, so for a child, what about like headaches, sleeping issues? I mean, I feel like there's so many different signs that we look for, and especially as a parent, you're constantly looking for signs in your kids, making sure that they're healthy. What do you do if you have headaches?
I'd suggest starting with your primary care provider first. 90% of the population gets headaches, so it's very common. And a healthcare provider is probably in a better position to decide whether it's a headache to be worried about or not.
Dr. Shumacher, similar to what Dr. Hawkinson was talking about, but Anne wants to know just where do you think the future of COVID is going based on information that you're following today versus maybe what we saw 6 months ago or 18 months ago? Just your take on that, of what we think we're going to see. And, when we see the zero numbers up there, I think people are commenting on, well, we see numbers up on the screen. Are we going to see that again?
No, I mean, as Dr. Hawkinson said, we don't have a crystal ball on this. I mean, this is obviously a once-in-a-lifetime event for people in our specialty. There's been continued ongoing spread over the last 2 years. And although we're trending down currently, we're still trying to ensure that we can get enough population immunity that we can stop seeing the emergence of variants and particularly severe disease. Now, as people continue to get vaccinated and or infected, they're going to have some antibodies that are going to protect them, so they're going to be less likely to get severe disease. But we continue to see recurrent and breakthrough infections causing milder disease. And as Dr. Hawkinson pointed out, we can only hope that at some point this turns into a seasonal viral respiratory pathogen instead of ongoing spread.
Question. Oh, do you have something to
And I
add,
would
Dr.
say,
Hawkinson?
and again, I think we also have to be understand too that our experience here in the United States is much different than places around the world. We know other places around the world still are being devastated by that, a lot because of lack of being able to get the vaccine. And so I think it's going to be important moving forward for all of us, even here, because we know we are just one plane flight away from really anywhere in the world, to continue to help and promote health and vaccination in those countries and get those supplies of vaccines to those countries that are less fortunate as well.
Joellen has a question and a comment. Setting politics aside, she says, my heart goes out to the millions of refugees who have no access to medical care.
Yeah.
Long term, what does that effect have on global health care in general? Just anything you can comment about what we're seeing.
I mean, I think anytime you have a refugee crisis and you're putting a lot of people together in probably substandard conditions, because some of the refugee camps that may pop up have to be constructed in short order, and you have to worry about overcrowding of people. You have to worry about sanitation issues and food safety, and we've seen this, repeat itself throughout history. Outbreaks of neglected or rare diseases in these situations. So yes, it is concerning. I think in this setting, we're seeing a lot of these displaced people going to urban areas where they're able to stay with other people. But we don't know what long-term this is going to impact, especially the people that are still stranded in conflict zones.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just as Dr. Shumacher said, has major implications. We're obviously the Ukraine is on the forefront of everybody's mind, but we've had other conflict zones and refugees. We know Syria. We know several countries in Africa as well. These all do have detrimental effects on global health, really. It's health in those local communities, but also global health as well. And we know we have seen decrease in vaccination program rates. We've seen increase in other diseases that have been otherwise controlled by public health and by vaccination. And so, it doesn't take much for these diseases then to go from those areas to spread out around the world either, especially if you have refugees going from one country to another. So it's very important to do what we can to get those infrastructures to try and bring that public health and that medical treatment to those populations, really to keep them healthy, because we know that when people and communities are healthier, their production is much better, everything is improved as well. And so, that will be something to strive for.
Hey, Bill, Amy wants to know, what's the biggest difference between this year's celebration and last year's celebration? Were we seeing big crowds last year? Were there concerns back then?
There were still a lot of concerns last year. There was celebration, not as big as we're anticipating this year, particularly with a little bit warmer weather, nicer weather. So I think there'll be bigger crowds and a bigger celebration this year.
I mean, is it fair to say, Bill, that it's just back to normal? Do I dare say the word normal?
I think as close to normal as we can be right now. It's not going to be more than normal, but approaching normal from the restaurant side, and I think from the consumer side, they want to be able to celebrate things like St. Patrick's Day.
Well, I think restaurants have, kind of given us that they've been that thing that makes us feel as normal as possible. Who knew that, we all go to restaurants. We've talked about this. You just run out and go to restaurants any old time you want. And then when this hit, it just made you appreciate so much more the ability to go sit on a patio somewhere and visit with friends, and now doing it safely. That's going to wrap up our questions today. So I do want to get to final thoughts from our guests. And Dr. Shumacher, I'm just going to start with you. Just final thoughts. What do you want us to know?
If you haven't been vaccinated, be sure to get vaccinated, including your booster, not just for COVID, but for influenza. We're right at the tail end of influenza season. So don't forget about the preventative measures.
Can't say it enough. Dr. Dubinsky, just thoughts about binge drinking and keeping our brains, and putting our brains first when it comes to out there partying this time.
Binge drinking is never good. Alcohol in moderation and not every day.
That's fair. Okay. I'd like to just note, I'm loving this bow tie thing. Not every person, not every man can pull off a bow tie. You both
Thank you.
You're both doing it. You're both doing it very well. And where is yours, Dr. Hawkinson?
Not a man, I guess. I can't pull it off.
Hey, you said it. All right. Final thoughts, and then we're going to go to Bill.
I don't think we can overemphasize Dr. Shumaker's points. Preventive care is about what best, whether we are talking about getting to your preventive care and your preventive screening for cancer, or especially in our line of work, preventive care for those vaccine preventable diseases. It is so important to stay up to date with your vaccinations, whether that is COVID vaccination, which you should be up to date. That will help protect you from any other further surge, but it's other things like the tetanus vaccine, which also has a component of whooping cough in it. And if we are adults and parents and grandparents, we know that we lose our immunity to whooping cough, and so getting that Tdap booster is going to help protect us from giving it to our young children or our newborn babies. It's the other vaccines, influenza. Just make sure you're talking with your medical professionals so that you can stay up to date with those to help protect you and reduce your risk from that serious disease and serious side effects of those diseases, which we know can be readily prevented with those vaccines.
Bill Till, thank you so much for being with us today and just reminding us to stay safe and enjoy life and get back to that, the new normal. Just your final message as folks head out to enjoy this week.
Well, my final message would be, let's all celebrate St. Patrick's Day, but let's celebrate in moderation. Don't overindulge. Let's all have a good time, and let's keep working to get back to normal.
Well said. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. We'll see you soon. March 30th is National Doctors Day, and here is a way to say thank you to all healthcare workers. Many of you have asked, how do we show our gratitude for everything that our staff does? On your screen right there is a QR code, so you can do just that. You can thank a healthcare provider. Just open your camera on your phone and you can just hover over that QR code. It's going to take you to your email. You can send a nice note or a 30-second video, and we are going to share those right here on the Morning Medical Update. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget you can catch our shows anytime on Facebook, YouTube, and now on Twitter. Coming up tomorrow, there's a new leader at the helm of the Kansas City Health Department. Dr. Marvia Jones joins us. The changes she plans to make to help those who are underserved and underinsured. That's tomorrow on Open Mics with Dr. Stites at 8 a.m.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.